Guess what? Last PDC session. We all get to go home.
Yeah.
So, thanks for joining us in this kind of tail end of PDC. I think we're really lucky. We got a lot of the folks who worked on LINQ, built LINQ, designed LINQ, invented LINQ, birthed LINQ, whatever other, I can't think of any other verbs, Anders. If you have more, please feel free to chime in. Why don't we just quickly walk through the panel so you all know who everybody is, and then we'll get started. So, starting from that end.
So I'm Luca Bolognese. I'm the program manager for the LINQ project.
For D-LINQ project, or for the LINQ?
The LINQ project.
I can't tell.
You have to learn this language.
Yes, I know.
I'm Dave Remy. I'm a lead program manager with the Web Data XML team, and I've been working on the X-LINQ technology.
I'm Paul Vick. I'm the technical lead on the Visual Basic Language and Compiler.
Anders Hejlsberg. I'm a technical fellow, C# chief designer, and then LINQ architect also.
And I'm Erik Meijer. I work with both the VB and the C# team on their language design.
Cool. So what I'd like to do is a couple things.
Well,
First,
who are you?
I'm Don Box. I work at Microsoft. I have this vacuum cleaner. I walk around, keep the hallways clean. What I'd like to do is I posted an entry on my blog last night or yesterday, knowing I was going to have these panels. And I'm moderating two panels. I did one on public-facing web services and one on LINQ. And the reaction on the public-facing web services one was quiet, whereas I got a lot of response to my LINQ one. So what I do is I've got a lot of questions here from the world outside, but you guys paid the money, right? So if you pay us, we sing your song. So I'm going to try and interleave your questions about what's going on with a few choice ones off the internet. And if we have time, we'll do them all. But we are going to be done at 2:15. I've learned one of the secrets of getting good ratings is to finish not late, but hopefully early. So I will try and get you all out of here so you can catch your flights. Anyway, if you all want to line up, there's microphones. And I'd like to start with a question from out there. Don't be shy.
Hi.
I have a question regarding performance of the LINQ queries versus a store procedure that you would have with, of course, has a query plan to optimize it versus the statistics in the database. So I'm wondering, and that's just for not just for updates, but also selects and deletes any type of updates or read from the database. So I'm wondering, how would performance factor in LINQ versus store procedure?
Yeah, I'll take that. So store procedure, we have been telling people for a long time to do everything inside store procedure, but the reality is that from SQL 2000, doing queries inside store procedure is as performance as doing dynamic SQL, because the optimizer is going to cache the query plan anyway. So this is one consideration, at least. In terms of the LINQ project, LINQ project, we haven't been testing performance yet. We haven't been working on performance yet, so I don't have any hard number to give you. But if you think about the way that the system works, when the query comes in, the queries are ready, the compiler already has the query in an object model forms, and so the only price that you pay there is the translation to a SQL query. And on the way out, the only price that you pay is the translation between rows and objects that is over there. And if you think about this scenario, then the translation to SQL is usually quite, it's all in memory, and it's usually quite it's not performance intensive. You probably don't lose much time there. And on the other side, the creation of the objects is something that you are probably already doing in your code. Or if you're using the dataset, it's already happening inside the dataset. So even on the other side, there is probably not much of a performance loss, especially if you consider that you probably have a database down there, so you have network round trip going on that turns out eating a lot of time. So, did I answer your question? Yep? All right.
Cool. Another question from out there?
Yes, you've provided XML object and SQL providers so far. Are you planning to provide a web provider?
Web provider. Well, I can tell you this. We've certainly looked at the ability to take, well, first off, you saw us in the Jim All lab where we effectively issued a query across the result of a web service invocation.
I'm not really talking about that so much as being able to get back either a DOM for a single page query or a list, RSS list for a multi-page query.
I'm not sure I quite understand what the question is.
So if the question is, I've got an RSS feed, and I want to issue a query against it and get it back in Xlink, that's totally supported. It's the simplest scenario on the planet. I'm confident that there are samples somewhere in the pantheon of samples we've published.
We have an RSS-specific
that do RSS.
Yeah.
In fact, we have both consuming RSS and serving up RSS using Xlink. Does that address your question, or is there something?
That's certainly one scenario. The other one is if I want to get back a specific page and then look at the content in that page. Could I get back, for example, a list of DOMs?
Well, yeah. So if you've got it, so for any XML resource out on the internet, that is for any URL that has an XML-based representation, you can absolutely use Xlink to be able to consume that thing. RSS is one example, a very popular example of those kinds of resources. But any kind of XML, like if you wanted, for example, to go up to a web service that had a #WSDL endpoint that served up the WSDL document. Well, if you wanted to see the WSDL document as XML, you just do a xdocument.load, and you're cooking with gas. Does that answer your question?
I absolutely understand that you can access it as XML, but most of the web pages aren't XML.
Ah, this is the HTML tidy question.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, question number 17. Yes, the answer is Chris Lovett, who works on Dave Remy's team, wrote this amazingly cool piece of software that I so wish was in the platform, but instead you got to go download it, which is effectively a XML reader over god-awful HTML. And so what it does is it takes HTML that just is illegal, and it makes it as legal. It tries it as best it can to make it legal, and it gives you an XML reader on top of that. If you plug that thing into xdocument.load or xelement.load, you're cooking with gas, and you're using Xlink.
Yeah, you can do transforms on it and queries on it.
Yeah, you can use Xlink to do all that HTML stuff. That would be an excellent set of samples
Great
for
screen scraper idea.
Yes, we're back into 3270. Can I do D-Link against 3270 screens? The answer is no. Okay. So you satisfied? You okay? All right. So you're going to use this stuff then? Okay, cool. Great.
Don't forget their questions.
Oh yes, interleaving. Yes, over there.
Hi. I was really impressed with the C Omega technology preview, and where did the streams technology and whatnot go, or where do you see some of those other things that got lost or dropped? Just want to comment on that.
Well, I can tell. Yes. So as you will have noticed, a lot of the C Omega stuff kind of ended up here. And one of the things, yes, that we had in C Omega is where we lifted operations over streams. So if you had a collection of buttons, you could just say .backcolor and it would lift over that. So. But we have to kind of take these things kind of step by step, and C Omega was really a research project where we tried to do, a lot of things in the language, and now we're kind of cherry picking these things out. So if you like that, and I heard actually over lunch somebody else was saying that they like that too, let us know, and then if this is something that's very useful in your daily work to make your apps easier to write, let us know, and then we can look at it.
But was there a specific feature you were thinking
about?
The
lifting over streams.
Lifting over streams?
Well, just more broadly, if you found those features were pretty separate in their utility, and you didn't, what did you walk away from? I just wanted to hear your comments on the compromises you found and whatnot.
Well, I think actually, so philosophically, there's sort of a difference between a research project where it's okay if some wires are hanging out of the box or whatever, because it's a research project. But when you're designing a programming language, you can only add, you can never take away. So by nature, we're very conservative about what we put in as language features, and we fret over it, have many sleepless nights, before we actually let it in the door, full well knowing that it's going to be there forever and could come back to haunt us. So I think we have very carefully picked. And every new feature that's in there is we believe, in there for a good reason. But like Erik says, I mean, I'd love to. The reason we're doing the tech preview is to get feedback, and so please let us know if there's stuff you feel shouldn't be there, or if there's stuff that's missing. We'd love to know.
Thanks. Over here.
Two questions. One regarding implementation. Does LINQ require changes to the CLR? This is the first question. The second question regards simplicity. C# is very simple to use, at least until generics. And no, I'm a C++ programmer, but one of the cool features of C# was it was so simple to use. And it looks to me as if it's becoming more and more complicated with many, many features. And LINQ is very cool, but I think it might be, it might open up places for misuse that, considering the trade-off, I'd like to hear your comments about why have you chosen to go ahead with it.
Okay. So let me take the first one first. It's a simple answer. The LINQ preview runs on the Whitby CLR. So .NET 2.0 CLR, there are no CLR changes required to do language integrated query. There are, of course, additional assemblies or libraries, you know, like for standard query operators, D-LINQ, X-LINQ, and there are new compilers, but the CLR stays the same. With respect to the complexity of the language, I mean, this is, of course, you know, the cross you bear as a language designer or as a design group that you know, every time you put something in, there's more stuff to learn. The way I view language integrated query and the reason I find it worthy is, and you saw it when we were in Jim's keynote, I asked how many of you use data in your applications, and everybody, well, first they all laughed, and what a stupid question, and then everybody raises their hands, which means that in reality, if you sort of carve out a corner of the world and go, well, this little corner here, you know, grew, but yes, but we also got rid of a bunch of complexity that everybody has to deal with daily, right? I mean, everybody in their app has to deal with the interface between a database and a programming language. And the fact that we move some of the features into the language, I mean, you have to look at the full sum of what it is you have to learn. And I do believe that the full sum of what you have to learn is getting smaller with this feature. And that's why I find it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for Visual Basic, obviously, too, we get a lot of concern from people when we talk about it, about simplicity, you know, about whether it's going to be too complex for the Visual Basic user. And then the work that we've been doing with it, we've found that to be extremely true, that you're actually subtracting more concepts out than you're adding, because you're just obviating the need to use a lot of things that you struggle with today. So.
I attended Luca's presentation this morning on D-LINQ, and you gave the example of a customer class and how you were decorating it with the attributes in order to indicate the mapping between the class fields and your data store. And you mentioned how in object spaces you had used mapping files, and you felt that the attributes were easier to use and easier to debug. But you, of course, mentioned that, well, there are trade-offs with that, too. Are you planning, I understand you haven't answered the question yet as to whether you're going to include mapping files as an option or not. Can you guys comment on that and what you see some of the pros and cons of both approaches are?
Do I take this?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I think attributes are indeed easier. I mean, I've used both and they are easier. I think there is no question about it. The only issue there is there are two, the way that I see it by talking with plenty of you guys at this conference, there are two main issues that you guys have with attributes. One is the feeling that some database stuff is percolating to your objects. I see you guys are moving your head like this. So, and that feeling is an uneasiness from your side and feels like we are not kind of keeping the separation that is at the base of these kind of tools. And so that's one drawback of using attributes. the other drawbacks is that right now the mapping that we have to the database is indeed really simple. It's a one-to-one mapping. When the mapping becomes more complex, then those become a lot of attributes to have on those objects, and then things become maybe not as simple as they appear right now. And our approach with that is, as I said in my presentation, we are starting incredibly simple. And we realize that. We fully know that. It's not that, as you know, I mean, I've been on object spaces for quite a while. I know all this crap about mapping objects to tables. I mean, I know all those things. And still I feel confident that we are doing the right thing by starting small. And the reason we are doing that is that, I mean, we are waiting for feedback, really. We want to do the simplest thing and do it well. And you know, if you guys come back to us and say, no, this is too simple, this is just demoware, we cannot use it really, then we would try to integrate your feedback. But to me, the kind of the trade-off on attributes against an XML file, or I say an XML file, but in reality it doesn't have to be an XML file. It's just taking those mapping out from your object model. And this is part of the trade-off between simplicity and flexibility in the framework itself. And we are drawing this line, right? We still have time to go, and the line may go up or down. So do I satisfy your question?
Well, I guess one other aspect is the abstraction, you know, and the isolation between schemas which you may not control.
Yeah. Yeah, that's you're perfectly right. The other is a practical question, which is if they are attributes on the objects, then if I change this mapping, I have to recompile my code, right? While if it was something external, then I don't need to recompile my object model. Yeah.
I mean, it is just adding a little bit. It is one of the interesting tensions in OR mapping that, you know, there are so many different ways of doing this stuff and so many different requirements. If you look at a big enterprise, you know, with a DBA and a Sprock wall and blah blah blah, and you know, and I mean, you can't even declare a view. You can't do anything, and you have to do all your own mapping and effectively replicate a lot of the database facilities in your business logic. Do you know what I mean? And then there are a class of apps where you do control both, and where all of that stuff just gets in the way. You know, and we're trying to strike a balance here, and it's a tough balance. But I think we all believe that by starting simple, at least we will have carefully chosen every feature based on customer feedback, as opposed to just jamming a bunch of stuff in that we think people might use, and then it turns out that it was extra baggage. You know?
So this is why we didn't start from OLEDB and start removing features?
Well, we recycled all of the characters in the files, but that's about it. Yeah.
Great. Over here?
In the DLINQ example, you showed how we could use exec to call stored procedures. Is there going to be a way to parse the stored procedures to create the classes that would represent the result sets?
Sure. I mean, this is something that we don't have hooked in yet, but it's perfectly possible when you run the tool against the database to generate methods on the you know, of the class that inherits from data context to represent the store procedure, and create classes to represent the results. This is very possible. We just haven't done it yet.
Great. Over here.
Just first want to say I think this stuff looks great. It's really nice to see Microsoft finally moving this way. And I applaud your approach of starting simple and doing it right and getting it right from the beginning. This is just out of curiosity. I'm curious what kind of feedback you're getting from the SQL Server team and from the SQL world in general. Just, you know, them being so used to doing things for the last 20 years this way.
Do you want me to? Yeah. I mean, so. I mean, we work with the SQL Server team every day. I mean, and part of what's I mean, that's part of one of the things that's interesting about Microsoft, the position we're in, is that we have assets in all of these different areas, so we can learn a lot from what's going on there. And there's lots of interest in you know, WinFS will support language integrated query, and everybody sees that as a good thing. You know, so there's lots of cooperation across the divisions there. Yeah, and I don't know if you want to add more. Or.
No, I mean, there are many things that the SQL Server guys can do for us and they are extremely excited about LINQ as we are. So we hope that you'll see more integration in the future.
One thing that personally I find to be very interesting is, and you see with Yukon or SQL Server 2005 that we now have SQL CLR in and the CLR inside SQL Server. You can write sprocs now in VB, C#. But you still have to use an ADO.NET low-level API to write your queries, and they're still in strings or whatever. And the obvious thing to look at is obviously to support language-integrated query inside the server. In fact, thank you. I have this dream that if you draw this 3x3 quadrant of objects, relational, and XML along one axis, the shape of the data, and the tiers, client, middle, and database, I want to put an X in every box there and say, yes, you can use C# or VB with language integrated query. That's where I want to go.
I have a question, EJB related, I guess. If you look at the EJB 3 spec, they're doing a similar thing that you're doing. They map data fields to the objects through the attributes, but they have the ability to override with an XML document. I assume that's the next step. I was curious about your thoughts about that.
Oh, I mean, that's one possibility. I mean, we can obviously support both, right? So, but before we go that way or any other way or support two ways of doing the same thing, we really want to be sure that with the only way that we have, we don't cover the scenarios. So, again, we want to wait for feedback. But that's one way of doing it, yeah.
It's also probably useful to note a couple interesting differences. One is D-Link isn't special, right? D-Link uses the same extensibility mechanisms that anybody else can use.
Yep.
If you really love language integrated query and for some reason you don't like the approach that these guys take on the relational mapping, you can replace it, you can just not use it, and go write your own. And I wouldn't be surprised if third parties like Data Direct or Connect.
Oh, I've talked to several OR mapping companies already that are like chomping at the bit.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah. So the other interesting contrast with EJB is, to the best of my knowledge, the queries in EJB can't be expressed in the same language and same expression model that you use for Java. Instead, I'm not a Java expert, nor do I play one on TV, but from what I can tell by looking at EJB, I can't actually just write a program that does a query. And I'll be honest, as a guy who's I've been using this stuff for, 6-8 months, however long it's been, the ability to just write a query. When you want to write a query, that's the thing. And there's a lot of scenarios where you just want to do that. And, I encourage you, Luca, to always allow me to just write a query. No matter what you do to appease all these people out here who pay you money, as your friend, please keep the ability to just write a query.
How much do you pay? I mean,
Money talks.
need to ask for a raise then.
Actually, 3 questions. The first, will it run inside SQL Server? If it's using the same runtime like the 2.0, so...
Maybe speak up a little bit. I couldn't quite hear.
If you try to run LINQ inside SQL Server already, or...
Or if we try...
Have we tried? Well, that's what I was just talking about in the previous question there, is that the logical next step for us to take with the CLR inside SQL Server is to support language integrated query, and that's something we're going to look at. But we have no announcements today or any previews, and the tech preview that you can download now and that was on the PDC DVDs does not run inside SQL Server. It runs on the middle tier or on the client tier.
Can I take the new compiler, write code that just does in-memory queries and load that DLL inside of SQL Server?
Sure. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you'd have to take the standard query operators assembly and put it in there too.
But would that work?
Well, I mean, the provider, you could do an in-memory query of some array you have in there, but could you query a table? No, I don't think so. But,
I think that the way that you create a connection inside SQL Server is different.
It's different.
Right now,
but you guys support bring your own connection with data context.
I mean, let me put it this way.
We haven't tried it.
All I'm saying is it's a logical next step to do. There's some work to do. We haven't done that work yet. But we will.
I wanted to see the impromptu demo. I wanted to see
Let's try it right now.
Let's try it out.
There's a guy with a laptop there. He's already coding it.
Oh, great. So you can come up and do the demo when you got it working. But we're not going to wait. We have planes. That was. Oh, you have 2 more questions. Go ahead. One more.
Okay, just one more. What about streams? So stream data and whatever.
What about?
Streams.
Streams?
Binary large object streams that I want to push around. And
Are you talking about the same thing we had, the object reader that we had in object spaces? That's what you're talking about? I'm not sure
No, if you do one of those nice link selects from and I get back a nice data stream that's out of some component or some database table where I have a binary large object or whatever, what will happen? Is there some way to optimize this?
Okay, so our blob, so you're asking about our blob support. Yeah.
Blobs. Okay.
The preview doesn't really, I think the preview only allows you to map blobs to byte arrays. Is that, I thought I saw Matt down there. Is it byte arrays or, yeah? Okay,
there is also binary.
Yeah, but I don't believe we support streaming currently, and there's some, there's some interesting issues with that because when you, actually we will support deferred load blobs, and then you can get a stream on the blob basically. So you can have, let's say, a customer can contain, or let's say rather a video table of videos that has a bunch of metadata about some video streams, and then it actually has a blob with the video stream, say. You could model as an object called video stream, and you could just fetch those and then have deferred loading of the blob itself, and not until you actually access the blob do we go fetch it, and then we give you a stream on it and so forth. So yeah, there will be support for that.
Just to add off what Anders said, this is one of the things why we need feedback, meaning we will publish what we support and you can tell us if this exactly solves your scenario. So that would be a good way for us to validate our design.
I do want to make one meta point here, though. It's like any LINQ is, or D-Link is not a replacement technology for ADO.NET. It builds on top of ADO.NET. So if there's a particular thing that isn't supported by D-Link, well, you can still, on the very same connection that D-Link is using to fire off its SQL commands, you can fire off your own.
Oh, yeah.
So it's sort of very much a synergistic model,
Cool. Over here?
Okay, first I want to say this is really cool stuff. You've earned your pay as high as it is. The question I have here, though, is related to, we're using LLBL Gen Pro for our ORM layer in an application we're developing, and we're actually modeling our database schema and object-oriented using like the party pattern. So we actually have kind of like inheritance tables, and so in our mapping with LLBL Gen Pro, we're joining the appropriate tables through their relationships, so that an object looks like a cohesive object to the application, but at the time of interacting with the database, it's spreading the glory, okay?
Right.
Yep.
Now, you're saying you're starting simple. That's really cool, but we're talking like maybe 2 years or more before we see this. Are you thinking about going that far? I mean, where we can actually use an object-oriented data schema, for example?
Let me ask just a follow-up question there. Is there any reason why you couldn't do this with views in the database and then map the views?
Well, we're trying to stay pure to a party pattern in terms of the database schema. In terms of, so if we add later another object, we can just inherit from that same master table and then use its relationships. So we're really wanting to keep the database schema tied pretty closely to an object-oriented model that we want. Now, that gives us a lot of flexibility in the future for adding new parties, or new objects that inherit from party, for example. Now, for us then, ORM, whenever we do that, we recompile the ORM, which generates all the code for us from the LLBL.
Actually, you're breaking up a little. Can I ask you to speak into the mic a little bit more, because it's hard for us to at least, I don't know, I have a hard time
the long and short of it
picking.
is, I guess I'm just saying I would really like to have the implementation be able to make object-oriented databases in SQL, for example, where we're following an object-oriented inheritance table structure.
Yeah, okay. Well,
not so simple so that there's one table, one object, but to have an object maybe be a composite of a bunch of tables representing their masters and subclasses.
Right. And it's one of the questions we get. And so far, our plan of record is, so in the preview, there's no support for inheritance currently. And you basically just map table to object. We're quite certain that we will support at least the discriminant column type of inheritance mapping, where we basically say it's all stored in, all of the objects are stored in one table, but there's a column in the table that says which type it is, and then, that sort of determines what we knew up. There are at least two other ways you can do, that I know of, that you can do storage of object hierarchies in a database. And the question is how far we go here. It's one of those things where, you keep adding more dials to the system, and before you know it, like for the simplest scenario, you're staring at a dashboard with 50 dials, that all have to be set right, and this is the simplicity devil, that
to make
or the complexity devil that we fight, right? So we will base this on feedback.
To make another point about inheritance, what Anders is saying, in object spaces we were supporting the 3 kinds of inheritance, and moreover different inheritance mapping in each part of the inheritance tree. And let me tell you, that's a mess. I mean, the code started to become incredibly complex to manage. The test cases, we weren't sure that we were testing all the scenarios. So Anders is perfectly right on this one. I mean, you can quite quickly get to a point where things are too complex.
I mean, we know for a fact that we will not, with D-Link, support every scenario known to mankind. We're gonna listen very carefully to feedback and pick the ones that sort of end up making sense. But I do think also that there's this important issue, this important point of the fact that doesn't mean that language integrated query isn't possible for advanced scenarios. We fully expect third parties to build super advanced object relational mappers that support language integrated query, which is why we bent over backwards to ensure that there's complete separation between the language extensions and the APIs that use those language extensions. So even if we don't do it, I'm quite certain someone else will.
I spend about 90% of my time in VB and 10% in C#. And it really helps me when things kind of work the same between the two. And if they don't, I got to figure out, how does that work? But I noticed in the VB demos, the syntax for the queries was very close to SQL. And it just felt good, looked good. But in the C# demo, it was close, but things were just out of order and stuff. Is there a way that could it work the same?
Can't wait to answer this question.
That's because we forgot to put the order by clause on the compiler.
No, why don't I let Paul answer first?
No, as moderator answers, I believe you should answer first. And Paul should get the rebuttal.
Okay. I can certainly contribute.
Okay, so this is, of course, not by accident that the select goes at the end in C#. And I think there are many reasons. Let me try and outline some of them. First of all, when you write a query with C# syntax, which actually very much resembles XQuery also, so there's precedent for this, you write your from clauses, then your where, then your optional order by, and then finally you end with a select or a group by. And you write things in the order that they occur. So first you write all of your sources of data, then you write your predicates, and then you do the final shaping of the data. And there's a one-to-one mapping between the order in the source and the order in which the operations occur. There's also a natural mapping of scope of variables flow precisely the way they do normally. So you say from blah in something, and that's where blah goes into scope, and it's in scope in the rest of the query. If you look at SQL, scope is really odd in SQL. It starts in the from and flows backwards and up and down. Do you know what I mean? So the variable is declared in the middle, but is in scope up here. And that actually brings about some strange issues for statement completion. Imagine how, so in C# you write from C in customers where C dot, boom, we know everything about C because you said C was in customers, we know where customers is. Now you write a SQL query, select C dot. What are we going to show you? We don't know what C is. You haven't said yet. So could you please write the from clause first and then come back up here and now say C dot, and then we can show you some statement completion. So there's some issues there with usability, I find. The final thing, though, is that in a relational query language like SQL, the shape of the data, the shape of your result tends to be flat. Well, because SQL is rectangular, so you're just basically selecting out some columns. It's true that some SQLs now support nested queries, but by and large, you select out flat columns. Now, in language integrated query, we also deal with object graphs and XML and deeply constructed sort of graphs of data, and your select clause actually tends to become very large because you can be constructing an entire XML document with 17 nested queries, and the notion that you first introduce your variables and then write this big piece of code in terms of those variables works a bunch load better than here's this big piece of stuff written in terms of variables that are introduced 2 pages further down. Just doesn't seem at all intuitive. So I understand that there are some intuitions in one direction, but I strongly believe that in what we're doing here, and this is one of those that if you don't do it now, you get to live with it for 20 years, or however long the language lives. So, thank you. So I'm a believer in the way we're doing it, and it was carefully chosen that way. Now I'll let Paul.
You should have gone first, Paul.
I know. Well, yeah, I would start with the first observation. Obviously, is that this issue it's become pretty obvious very quickly that this is one of the sort of those. If you talk to customers, religious issues like case insensitivity or case sensitivity, you're going to find people who claim that God intended select to come first, and some people claim that God selected from to come first. But I think the reality is the reason why we chose what we chose was that we definitely believe that a lot of VB users are going to be very familiar with SQL. That's going to be very intuitive syntax for them. And so they're going to expect a very kind of SQL-like syntax to be able to transfer their experience and their knowledge. All that being said, though, obviously a lot of the issues that Anders raises are ones that we've been wrestling with from the very beginning. How IntelliSense would work, because IntelliSense is critically important. And then also, with the size of the select expression. So these are obviously issues that we're going to be looking into in terms of what, how does it work in the tool? Are there games we can play with IntelliSense and the way the flow works that actually works well? Do we allow it to be flexible? Because one thing that, one sort of philosophy the Visual Basic has is, sort of the case-insensitive kind of thing where it's like, well, as long as it's sort of obvious what you're doing, we can afford to be a little more relaxed about things. So maybe it is about allowing either ordering depending on what you want. But it's just really something where, we're early enough where we want to take some time to play with it and we're not committing ourselves to one particular design or the other, but we want to find what seems to work best for the user, because for us it's not really about a religious, it's more about what is going to be most practical and useful.
And from the Libertarian Party, we'll hear it.
So I actually completely disagree with Anders on this. So I think this select should be...
So I guess I was sort of the middle. I was the Libertarian. You're the...
So the thing is, especially if you're returning a complicated things, I want to see what you're constructing first, and otherwise I have to kind of scan through the whole query and then see what gets constructed. So for the reader, I think it's much easier to see the select first. And then I can ignore, how you where you pull it from and if you order by. I want to see what you create.
This is the mathematician in you, Erik. It's like
yeah, sure. That's how I'm saying. Yeah.
Ad hominem attacks will not be tolerated. So as you can see, we're quickly converging to a common solution.
We're all in complete agreement.
We'll have 2 select clauses, and then we'll take both of them and put it.
Great. I think that was from this side, so let's go over here.
I happen to have this very smart friend called Klaus Wusterfeld, the guy who wrote Prevailer, right? Prevailer, first, just to paraphrase Don said in the keynote that console.writeline was so 80s, right? And object relational mappers also seem to be so 80s or 90s, right? And looking at the future, you see all these advancements in memory technology, right? And when you talk about object-to-relational mapper, you don't only have this impedance mismatch between the representation. You actually have this mismatch between the expressivity of the things you can do with a actual in-memory object model. How do you implement the observer part, design pattern with databases? How do you implement all these design patterns that are industry has been developing all over the years with databases. Klaus Wusterfeld actually generally says that the reason that we as an industry are still in the middle age is because we have relational databases. Because people cannot really apply everything they are learning, and we as an industry are learning, right, as a software development community. So I would like to have your thoughts on this. So how do you see the future with all these memory advancements?
Can I?
So I mean, I think so. Klaus makes some, or were you gonna?
No, I was just about to say that. I mean, it's not that you enjoy having an object relational database. It's just that there are relational databases out there, and so you need to get objects out of them. I mean, it's not as much as that is, you know. Myself, I'm an object relational guy, but, you know, it's not that I enjoy doing all that mapping and do all those things. I mean, I have to, because the relational databases are out there and they are not going away anytime soon. And if they do go away and the industry evolves, I'll be, you know, more than happy. But that's not happening. So
I mean, the actual barrier we have today is not like the representation of the data. In my view, in Klaus' view, is actually the barrier you have from the runtime, from the virtual machine or whatever. When you have your objects and you have to get these objects to another place, then you have this barrier. They are not more in memory. You cannot have real relationships. You lose all the flexibility of a real object-oriented environment, right?
Let me try and sort of take the sort of neutral approach here. So Klaus makes some pretty outrageous claims about in-memory databases and the Prevailer project. I've read about it. It's very interesting, I think. And I think, you know, it would be kind of pointless to get into a debate now about whether in-memory databases are the true path or object relational databases. And I do agree with you that in-memory databases definitely are going to see more use because memory is getting much cheaper, and you know, it is becoming possible to do stuff that we previously couldn't do. I sort of return to the thing I said earlier, which is because we've designed LINQ to be completely separate from the actual APIs and technologies, language integrated query will be a wonderful thing to have on top of your in-memory database. In fact, I can't wait for third parties to build in-memory databases with language integrated query. You know, I encourage it, I welcome it, you know, it's going to be a great thing. So I think, you know, the beauty of it is that we get to make this advancement either way.
Yeah. You know, you were talking about Prevailer, and it's quite easy to put Prevailer behind the language integrated queries.
Yes,
that would be
it is.
incredibly easy. So that's one sample that will go easy.
So now that I've been earmarked as the mathematician, I would say, you know, don't underestimate the power of the relational model, because the disadvantage of the object model is that when I have customers and orders, I have to have like an orders property on my customer, whereas in the relational case, I can have customers and orders and then kind of join them separately. So I think the relational model is extremely flexible and offers you more than what the object model can give you. So
the problem is that we, as an industry, but that's a view of a database guy that don't see objects as having behaviors.
Dude, we moved beyond objects. We solved the object problem. We have runtimes to do objects. The world is passing you by if you stay in that trench.
It's all services, isn't it? Or is
it could be anything, right? The fact that we use objects in the CLR is a detail, right? If you look at the metaphors that are, if you spend any time at this PDC, nobody's talking about objects. They're talking about domains where they care about things. Like in the world of MySpace, it's contracts and services.
Microsoft produces its SQL database, right? I guess you have vested interest in that, so.
Believe me, the SQL Server revenue is not, you know, everything we've got. We make money on a lot of different things, right? And and PDC is about developer productivity. I strongly encourage you to not get caught in the quicksand that is OO. OO has its place. It's a wonderful thing, but it's not the end.
I'm sure.
I just would like to add a point from the SQL Server perspective on that question. SQL Server, while its root is in managing relational data, is moving towards becoming a data management system. So, and data is more than just objects, it's more than just trees, it's more than just relational, it's all together. And what role behavior plays in that, I think I agree with Don here that behavior is more basically an abstraction of query and update and less of what you actually store inside and manage on the lower level.
Next. There's no one over there.
No,
Great.
next over there, but over here.
Okay. On a slightly different topic. Interested.
Oh, come on.
Let's
We're
change
getting
it.
warmed up.
Let's change the subject.
I'm actually really interested in the whole parallelism. So things like using Lambda functions for parallel by the threading, also things like grid computing, agents. I'm just interested where your thoughts are in terms of that.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting because people ask me about concurrency and you know, are we going to have language extensions in C# for concurrency and whatever, and I go, well, you know, a lot of the stuff that's in there right now is actually great for parallel operations. So one of the cool things about anonymous methods or their evolution now that we call lambda expressions is that it allows you to pass code as parameters. And you can imagine, you know, like matrix or vector operations, or you know where you call a library, say here's my matrices and here's the transformation as a piece of code. Now please go execute this the most efficient way possible. It can parallelize it, run it on multiple processors, et cetera, et cetera. And so really what we've done in a sense with the language integrated query stuff is we've broken the problem down to the constituent pieces, right? And part of query is, you know, when you pass a where clause or a select is, you're passing in a little predicate, a little piece of code, you know, that you want executed multiple times, right? And the mechanism for doing that is lambda expressions. But lambda expressions have lots of other uses. Here's one. I can also name like things like constraint-based systems, rules engines, triggers for notifications. You know, there are lots and lots of interesting stuff you can do with these things. So it's not just query, and so those are at least some of the thoughts. Yeah.
So one of the things, to talk about concurrency, we moved queries now from the database world to the programming language world, but I think we left something very important behind, that's transactions. Transactions give you an extremely simple mental model of writing concurrent applications. You know, it's atomic, it either works or it doesn't work. So I predict that soon we will have also in-memory transactions. So just like the database people use transactions to do concurrent programming, I think we should have transactions in memory to do concurrent programming as well.
In fact, I mean, there's some research there from Microsoft Research, if you're interested on software transactional memory, that you can go find and read. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, to be clear.
What is it, Simon Peyton-Jones?
Simon Peyton-Jones and Tim Harris, he did a talk this morning, actually.
Yeah. To be clear, we have in-memory transactions now in Whidbey. What we don't have is automatic transaction for all virtual memory.
Right.
So
and you have to do compensation for the in-memory stuff. I mean, to get back to.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
It's just a very sub-question. Are lambda expressions serializable?
Are they serializable?
Delegates serializable, yes.
No,
the delegates are not.
Well, but that's the lambda turns into a delegate, right? So, but are you talking about the expression trees that if you ask for a lambda expression as an expression tree, yes, you will be able to serialize it. If you ask for it as IL...
So can you go back from an expression tree to IL?
Well, that's a service that we probably will provide. We actually, in the LINQ preview, we have a little example that takes an expression tree and then you effectively call a method on it that says, give me this expression tree as a delegate. And now you can call the delegate. And the way we implemented this, we use reflection. But you could imagine us using reflection emit to actually generate the code. So there are... This is one of those things that, you know, it's not entirely formed yet, but we have lots of ideas about it. You could also imagine lightweight parsers to create expression trees. We have an example of that, but we haven't formalized it as a service yet. You know, so there are lots of things that we're end up doing.
So here's an exercise for the readers here. Write something that takes IL and gives me an expression tree. That would be cool.
I can do that. I'll just return a method expression. How much are we paying?
That's a trivial solution.
We have one over there.
Do we have one over here?
Hi. Can you use integrated query against data sets and data tables? And if, could the data set itself be the in-memory database you mentioned earlier?
Sure. That's a good question. Right now, we don't have language integrated query for data sets, but it is definitely something that we will provide. And you're right. You know, sort of when does the data set become an in-memory database? Because once you have language integrated query and the ability to create tables and whatever, it's sort of a slippery slope. You know, you get onto. I mean, so far data sets don't have persistence, so that certainly would sort of limits their usefulness. I mean, yes, you could keep them in memory, but how are you going to get the data stored once you want to turn off the power? But I definitely think it's a meaningful thing to do to support language integrated query with data sets, and that's what we're looking to do. Yeah.
There's some interesting issues right now because what we're doing is building this on top of the WIDBE CLR as it exists today, and so that obviously puts a lot of restrictions on what you can do with the code the data set as it stands now, but it's definitely an interesting topic for future.
Yeah.
Hi. I would love to hear you guys just talk about your dreams for other uses for language integrated query beyond SQL, beyond XML. Just talk about some of your dreams and the things. Just give people in the crowd some ideas. We can do our own dreaming.
Yes.
Sure. I have lots of dreams. I have three main dreams. One is to add explicit relationships to object-oriented languages because, as I said before, I think that's very, very powerful. The second thing is what I like to see is to have what I call a SQL VM where the JIT knows about queries and can kind of use the query processor as a co-processor. So that they're kind of really a deep integration of the two execution engines. And my third dream is to have transactions everywhere. So it's real small dreams, but
easily achievable.
3-year plan. That's your 3-year plan. What are you going to do in the next 3 years?
Yeah.
No, I definitely think that the software transaction stuff carries some hope to, for me at least, to perhaps get to a concurrent programming model that the average man can master. I mean, which is why you have not seen us codify concurrent programming in a programming language yet, because the current state of the art is simply, in my mind, too complex. I mean, people can't write concurrent applications and make them work. Shared state locks, monitors, and deadlocks, and all of that stuff it's too hard. And so we need some advances there, and I'm hoping to see those. And then, as a language designer, you can start thinking about what do you do to put it into the language. I'm actually quite interested in stuff like in-memory databases. I also think language integrated query. There are lots of other stores out there that could be encapsulated, like Active Directory, the Jet store in Outlook and Exchange. I like that. Query is, even the file system, query against the files, and WinFS. And so
WMI.
Yeah, lots of other stores. The registry, eh? R-Link. That has a ring to it.
RegLink.
Yeah.
Paul, what's your dream for the Visual Basic?
Well, it's funny. I was like, damn it, Anders kind of took mine there. But coming from, before I worked on Visual Basic, I worked on Access. And, the in-memory database question, making databases really easy to use and accessible, very naturally fitting in with the language. I would love to see something like that take shape. And that's really kind of a dream to make working with a database graspable by pretty much anyone. I think that's...
Yeah.
So I'd say in the XML world, with XLINQ, the thing that I'm looking for, that I would really like to see is a strongly typed sort of solution over XLINQ. Right now, if you've noticed with XLINQ, you've got to use a lot of casts and quotes. It's still a huge step forward in usability, but the strongly typed aspect of it, and my background is actually in that area, and so my goal is to have a really great, strongly typed programming model with XLINQ. I'd like to see that.
Mm-hmm.
So they stole all my dreams. So
you have no dreams left.
For me, I'm still on the pragmatic side. I mean, I've been working on this object relational stuff for very many years, and my dream is to finally ship it.
Thanks, Luca. That was brilliant.
I have a question regarding the performance. I basically mean, from performance, basically what I mean is, when you today do a profiling of a SQL code, you get the plan. So you come to know about, hey, how I should actually, whether I should use this query and so on and so forth. So there are two set of questions. One is that, look, these are still early days for the D-Link overall, but can you get a plan, which, if you know the store, can you get an early plan itself out of the whatever D-Link query that you have got, saying that this is good or bad or something like that? Second thing is basically the D-Link query itself analyzer kind of thing, where you can say that how many anonymous delegates are being fired in this whole query. Or if you, because now we have a two kind of layer over the top of the database. One is the ADO, the SQL itself, the ADO itself, and top of that we have the D-Link. Although D-Link will actually send the ADO queries, but what I'm really looking for is there is one set of performance information for generating directly the SQL or any kind of store information, whether the query is going to be good or not for the final store. Second is analyzing the D-Link query itself and finding out if this D-Link query is good enough, in the sense like how many delegates it's going to fire off and so on and so forth.
Yeah, let me take both of them. On the first one, I had many discussions with people, and they were suggesting that it would be great if we can, if SQL would accept our own query tree without us having to translate this to SQL, and then from SQL to the SQL engine tree, and then, doing it. And you're perfectly right. There is an opportunity there, and we'll be working with the SQL team on that one. In terms of how many queries the link sends to the database and the quality of those queries, in terms of how many queries, in my demo I showed how you can have deferred query or including, and I'm personally not aware of any other way of diminish the number of queries that go through. I mean, or you know everything that you need up front, or you don't. And if you don't, the most efficient way is to defer the fetching on those objects. So that's about that one. About the quality of the queries, I mean, we have people working, we have good devs working on this stuff, and they talk with the optimizer guys all the time, and so I'm quite confident that we will submit a good quality query to the database.
Thank you.
I don't know, did I answer your question?
I think it was perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, I had a question about performance optimizations for the in-memory stuff, basically. So what you're doing right now is to have an IEnumerable T. One of the things you need to do to be able to automatically optimize performance is to know about the number of items that are in the set. So maybe you could extend some stuff that when you do iCollection T or something, that you automatically order the different for each loops in an efficient way.
Yeah, so right now our strategy for in-memory queries on arrays and whatever is by nature very simple and straightforward. We effectively do linear scans, it's like writing for loops, and then when you have multiple froms, it's like nested for loops, and it has very predictable semantics. It also will not scale to 1 million row table by 1 million row table. You do a cross product of those two. Or a join or whatever, and that's not really what it's intended for either. But that said, I think it is definitely, it is possible to construct collections that are smarter about these things. But if all you have is an array, then you don't have an index, and you know what I mean? And so there's a limit to how much you can do, and I want the queries at the bottom level, I want the execution to be so simple that whenever you would have written a for loop or whatever, you go, well, I'm just going to write a query instead because I know and trust that this is going to be just as efficient. But if every query starts out with careful analysis and query plans and now we're going to build an index and whatever, then you cut off the bottom scenarios. Do you know what I mean? And query will never become as pervasive as I'm wanting it to be. So I think it sort of, in the end, will depend on what data structures you use to store your data in. If you use arrays, you're going to get the simple semantics. If you put it into a more intelligent data structure that supports, that asks for queries as expression trees and builds a plan for it and executes it, then, you can in large scenarios get better performance, but it will depend on, there won't be one single answer, because I don't think there can be one single answer.
Well, I was more thinking about the combination of things. So, for instance, you do something to a database, join that to an in-memory model, and then you might do some optimizations there to make it more efficient, basically.
Right. And there are different, we will certainly, when you're joining data between a database and in memory, then obviously you sort of have two choices. You can either try to send all the in-memory data over to the database and do the join there, and that by and large is not going to work. Which means that you're now faced with doing the join in memory then, and that may entail, executing, multiple queries, or first figuring out what are all of the rows you want, sending that to the database, and then getting back all of them, and we will certainly recommend the right patterns for writing this kind of code or whatever, and show people what is the way that you're supposed to do it, what's the way you're not supposed to do it, as this matures. Yeah.
I mean, what I would add is just that the great thing about the way that the LINQ is designed is, as we were sort of talking about earlier, it has this sort of enormous flexibility, and sort of there are infinite amount of capabilities you can think of building on top of it. So I think it's really just a question, too, of as we move forward, seeing how people use it and seeing then what the holes are.
And also, as a final note, when you do some type of performance optimization, you could also automatically, for instance, generate multiple threads, use multiple processes if you have somewhat larger data sets in memory, those kinds of things. So I was just wondering about if you were planning on thinking about it in any form, or just say, hey, that's something really nice for the next version.
Right. It's not something we're actively thinking about, but I think it is something that, again, I think because of the separation between the language and the APIs, it is actually something that people themselves can experiment with and build libraries of smart data structures, smart in-memory data structures with language-integrated query. And I definitely think we'll see a lot of that.
Yeah, you won't see the compilers become query optimizers.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, now I have two valid questions. And later an advice for Don. Okay, so okay, the valid questions are, so in terms of optimization for D-Link, if I have a property in my object that is not mapped to a column in my table, but this is a property that is calculated from two different properties that are actually mapped. So are you doing analysis of this code to optimize the generated SQL or not? And the other one is, are we getting LINQ for mobile devices?
So on the first one, we are not optimizing that.
Okay.
On the second one, I don't. Do we have an answer? I don't know.
What was the second question?
If we are, the second question was if we are bringing
for the compact framework.
For the compact framework, it's more of a question for the compact framework.
Yeah, I mean, the question is whether will LINQ make it into the compact framework? And I mean, certainly LINQ will ultimately become part of the the standard query operators will become part of. Okay. MS Corelib or the CLR or something like that, system.dll or whatever is where they ultimately reside, I don't know. But it'll be in the runtime and therefore also in the compact framework, at least a subset of it. I would not expect to, for example, see a full-blown object relational mapping in the compact framework. I mean, that kind of seems like, a bit at odds with. But certainly, I would imagine other language-integrated query technologies on the compact framework that are sort of more in tune with what you do on that platform. The one with the properties, so effectively, we of course do allow you to have computed properties, but it's not like we do any analysis of where the data is coming from or whatever.
In that case, we are getting all the rows from database and going with the standard
You're getting, you're getting the columns.
One thing I do want to call out, though, one way language-integrated query and D-Link differs dramatically from other object relational mapping is that we have very rich and strongly typed support for projection. So you can write a query against your customer object, and then you can just choose to select company name and phone from that customer, and that's all we're going to bring back. We're not going to actually instantiate fully the customers and then give you those two fields. So projection is actually a possibility. So you get to write queries that project against your OR metadata, if you will, and that's a capability that most OR mappings either don't have or do poorly on. And for that kind of stuff, of course, you can do computed columns as well.
And the advice would be, it would be useful to go around the game developers team and ask how they can build these really complex applications. I guess the answer would be very enlightful.
Great. Thanks. Anybody else? Well?
There's one.
Oh, do we have one? Great.
I have a question. I think this is great, but so far I haven't heard anything how you're planning to address updates, inserts, and deletes.
Oh, okay. Do you want to talk about that, Luca?
We don't support them. They
So-
cause all kinds of concurrency problems.
Read-only data is best.
Functional programming languages are right. There should be no mutation.
So if you kill a chicken, do you get
This
a
is
copy of
okay.
the
This
chicken?
is how we are innovating.
Let's stop.
We are so innovative that we don't need them. So, the way we support insert updates or deletes is that it's a traditional object relational kind of stuff. Meaning we keep the old values around, and when you submit your update, we use optimistic concurrency to check that that the update has to succeed, and no one else kind of modify the data in your database. And that's the dynamic SQL scenario. But if you want to update using store procedure, you can go to the data context and plug in your own store procedure for a particular set of objects, for example. And when the framework needs to go and update those objects, then we would call your store procedure instead. And about transaction, which is part of very many updates, you can. We work with transaction scope, which is the new transaction APIs for Whitby. At the same time, if you have DTC transaction and such, we automatically enlist in those as well. We don't do anything really. It's the SQL, it's the ADO layer that we are using that does the automatic enlistment. So
It's still basically an ADO functionality then.
What was that again?
ADO.NET functionality. That's what it is.
For the enlistment on DTCs, yeah.
Another question is
sorry,
regarding...
your question was if you're using ADO.NET for update and inserts, then?
Well, what I got from your answer was that ADO.NET was basically the solution for doing inserts and updates.
Insert, updates, and deletes are fully supported by D-Link. When you write queries and you fetch customers, you can make changes to those customers, then you can say db.submit changes. We will push the changes back to the database. We can do that in one of two ways. We can either dynamically generate insert, update, delete statements that we send out on your connection, or you can tell us which sprocs to call for each of the various entities like customer, orders, whatever, and then we will call sprocs to effectuate these updates. So there's very rich support for that, and it's sort of the hallmark of any object relational mapping. If you don't have that, I don't think you could call yourself an OR mapping. Yeah.
That's good. Another question. Will the expressions support expressions for multidimensional arrays to do MDX and OLAP type of analysis?
Not quite sure.
This is the cube stuff. Do we have support for cube stuff?
Not currently, although that is something people have asked, and certainly, again, because we have an extensible model where you can declare your own query method, so to speak, I do actually think that we're going to look at how we could add additional methods to the query operators that support data cubes and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
I have more of a suggestion or a request to you guys.
Can I ask you to speak into the mic a little bit more,
yes,
because it's hard for us to...
I have a suggestion or a request to you guys. It happens very often that when Microsoft releases new features, they are described in their very well. We always know how nice they are, how usable they are, but it's very often that we don't know about the dark side of it of them. And all right, there are some examples like hierarchical data sets, row sets, things like may work very well in certain situations and may have a pretty terrible performance in other. And it comes from the simple fact that when people see a feature for the first time, their first reaction is something that what's written on Don Box's shirt today. And
this is the Windows Transaction Foundation.
Actually, many people never go beyond that point, right? And they just start blindly using the feature. What we really need is more knowledge about how the things are working internally, and it's very nice of you that you guys are trying to explain it now. I just want to make sure that it goes into documentation, and right beside that a very nice example of how the things can be used, there's going to be another side saying, hey, don't do that, or you're in trouble.
We actually, so when you install the LINQ technical preview and you look at the documentation we provide with it, I think you'll find that this is probably one of the more well-documented tech previews you've seen. I mean, we have in there an overview paper that explains sort of a roadmap of the whole thing. Then we have the C# 3.0 language specification, VB 9.0 spec. We have standard query operator specification and source code. We have a D-Link specification and X-Link specification. It's like hundreds of pages of docs. There's a sample browser with 360-some examples that you click on, you see the code, you run it, you see the output, source code provided. And so we really tried hard this time to not just drop some bits and you go guess what they do. I mean, but quite honestly, to really deeply explain how it all hangs together. But tell us whether there's not enough. I mean,
thanks a lot. I think it only gives us another chance to applaud you guys for your great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One last question, then we'll wrap it up.
All right. I was just wondering, with the new SQL Server XML data type, how does that fit in with D-Link and X-Link?
Right.
What was the question? The
SQL Server data type.
Dave, Remy.
Yeah.
Yes, Dave.
Right now, there's really no relationship between the SQL Server data type and X-Link. X-Link is for in-memory XML, and we'll work out how working with a data type over time. But really, you use XQuery to access that, and we use language integrated query with X-Link. And X-Link is about in-memory XML.
But I had dinner with Michael Reese last night.
I think, quite honestly...
Okay, jump in here.
But that's the current state of the preview.
Yes.
That said, I think it is obviously would be very interesting if we could, in D-Link and X-Link, sort of have a marriage, that allowed you to write a query that not just talks about the relational columns, but also talks about the XML that's in here. Let me query into that. Do you know what I mean? In the same query language. And I think we at least finally have something that allows you to talk about both in a coherent fashion. And there's still work to do there, but I think we've laid the right foundational pieces, and I can assure you it's something we're going to pursue.
Yeah. So I think, for example, that D-Link could and should generate the X query if it runs over.
Yes,
the
but
columns,
we also got to ship it.
See what we can do.
Yeah, sure.
That's where
Shipping is a feature which we may
I'm
have
the
to cut,
mathematician,
Anders. I don't know how to break it to you. Don't get too attached to that one. Luca can give you advice on it. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming. This is the last thing at PDC, so thanks for spending the rest of your tail end of PDC with us. I think the panelists did a great job telling you what they were thinking about, and you did a great job telling us what you cared about. So I really want to thank everybody very much for coming. So let's give it up for the panel. Thank you.